Good evening and welcome to the February 17th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. Before we get started, anyone with cell phones or electronic devices, if you would please silence them, we'd greatly appreciate it. Check mine. If you're here to speak on any application tonight, we encourage you to do so. All we ask is that you take the podium and give your name for the recording secretary. All right. And if you need an agenda for tonight, they're on the chair over there, next to the door. Okay, first up tonight, request for continuance under notice of intent. Carl Gravina, 45, Madeline Road, East Falmouth, Mass., with permission to remove the existing pier, float, and to construct an elevated 4-foot by 12-foot walkway with stairs, 5-foot by 20-foot fixed terminal, T, installed 10-inch diameter pilings and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until March 2nd.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Maury and a second by Betsy. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay.
I have a comment. Where's Mike? Is he here? Oh, so I assume it'll be, I assume it will be properly staked the next time? Now it's staked. Oh, well, how nice. Thanks, Mike.
You
Just
good?
so you know, it wasn't me who turned you in.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Abstentions, unanimous, so moved. Next up is Cadet Enterprises, 1184 Sandwich Road, and Lot 193 Sandwich Road, East Falmouth, Mass., with permission to construct a commercial building including installation of a 10-foot-high concrete wall, Title V sewage disposal system, catch basins and drainage basins, bituminous concrete paving, parking, driveways, utilities, fenced-in dumpsters, and the associated excavating, grading, and landscaping. All work is outside of the conservation jurisdiction.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, clarification, remember last week, in the morning, that's where it was, and I was like, all the way down Sandwich Road, and turned around, it's where the Hess station is.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So it's right there on that corner.
All right.
Where the Dunkin' Donuts is.
And wasn't there an endangered plant species behind
there
there?
is.
It's outside of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
outside of that. So our recommendation, ready, -4 and a -6.
So moved.
-4 under the state and a -6 under the bylaw.
So moved. We always like new negative numbers.
That's what you guys did.
Second.
So I've got a motion by Betsy, second by Mary. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Abstentions, unanimous, so moved. Robert and Joanne Fallon, 71 and 75 Little Island Road, West Falmouth, Mass., for permission to approve some after-the-fact work to install underground utilities, replace and expand porch, stairs, walkway on 75 Little Island Road, relocate 2 AC units, install a concrete pad for a generator, remove old generator pad, install native tree and shrubs and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are recommending for a -2 under the statement bylaw to the appropriate boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I got Mike and Mary. Was that you, Mike?
That was me.
Okay.
That was me.
And I got Mary. Sorry.
did.
My hearing, I
don't
guess,
get
doesn't
paid for it.
extend
It's
that
okay.
far. Okay, any other comments or questions from the commission?
I have one question, Jen, to you. If I'm not mistaken, this had a notice of intent originally, and there was supposed to be a Phragmites removal, and I have not seen in 3 years any action on that, and there's been a lot of construction and redevelopment there.
That was, it was Phragmites or was it
Bamboo. I'm sorry, bamboo. It was
Still there.
bamboo. So what's going on with that?
I will check on that.
Because
and
I
get back to you.
think that should have a timeline, because I feel that what's going to happen is everything's going to get done, and that's not going to get done, and that's really imperative. It was bamboo.
No, I know it was.
It was part of the- yeah.
But I gotta check on that. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was in their order.
All right,
And if the order's still outstanding, they still have time to do it.
Yeah.
I just want to bring it to their attention with all this unpermitted work that they did, that maybe they could get the permitted work done.
All set, Maury?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's subtle, Maury.
Well,
Comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Abstentions, unanimous, so moved. Next up is, we've already read that, and that's being continued to March 2nd. So we'll move on to continued notice of intents for hearings under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. So first up is going to be the Woods Hole Steamship Authority, care of Bill Cludia, 29 Lobscombe Ave. It's already been read into the record.
And Mike and I have to recuse
So
ourselves.
Mike and Betsy are recusing themselves.
Don't forget us.
I'll try. Who? I shall try. Okay, Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was continued so that the board could have an outside consultant to look at the application on their behalf. That was done by Applied Coastal Research and Engineering. They identified some issues which felt to me to be a little bit more addressed. Prior to that, the authority did submit a supplemental information to the notice that addressed a number of the questions and concerns the board had at the original hearing. So Applied Coastal Research that as well. We were given a response to those comments by CPA. The other day, I emailed it to all of you, I believe yesterday, when we got it in. And here we are. And then, right before the hearing, the Steamship Authority submitted some more correspondence into the record, and they can go through that with you. Okay?
Okay.
For the record, my name is Bill Clutie. I'm with the Steamship Authority.
Bill.
I have several people with me to support this project. From Childs Engineering, I have Becky Skolaski. From GGA, mostly on the stormwater, is Nate Russell. Steve Lecco is in charge of the permitting for this project. Wayne Lamson is here, of course, as the general manager, and Steve Sears is our general counsel. So as, just to reiterate, we had, initial hearing on November 18th. There are a number of questions for additional information, which we submitted on December 17th. We got the comments from the outside reviewer a week or two ago, and we responded to them this past week. So here we are. I guess I will address any questions that the board may have at this point. And we can move on. Or do you want to, I could start with this most recent letter that our general counsel put together.
Yeah, let's start there, if Steve wouldn't.
Chairman, we can start there, and then Bill, if you could go through some of the supplemental information that you submitted,
Sure.
that would be helpful.
Okay. Okay, so when we met with the administrator last week, it came to our attention that one of the bylaws regarding the floodplain elevations we were conflicting with. And the main reason for that is the accessibility of the requirements for us to be accessible for the general public on our site. And so what we're planning to do is to build the first floor elevation of the building will be at the BFE, which is AE 13. And we're going to get a variance from the state building code on that account, because the state building code, when the new edition comes out, will be at BFE, the requirement would be the BFE +2. And we can't reasonably do that and maintain the accessibility to and from the boats and from the terminal and with a reasonable accommodation. So in regard to the bylaw, the wetlands bylaw would require us to build to the BFE +1 or incorporate it in our design and construction. Potentially that, we are planning to wetproof 2 feet above the BFE, so that may be acceptable to the board, but if not, we would have to, we think we're exempt from the wetlands bylaws because of our authority status for the general public. And Steve Sayers could provide a lot more detail than I can, so it's a general outline, so I'll let Steve.
Actually, Bill just said it much more succinctly than I can. And my name is Steve Sayers. I'm General Counsel for the Steamship Authority, for the record. This was brought to our attention because our terminal building has to be as low as possible to maintain accessibility for all of our customers and individuals with disabilities. Although we're raising the bulkhead at the waterfront side of the terminal to about 8 or 9 feet above sea level, we have to maintain accessible slopes of 1 to 20 as much as possible so that people can actually use our facilities. We also have to maintain side slopes from the terminal building down to Railroad Avenue, which is, I believe, around 5 or 6 feet above sea level. And so it's very important to our operations as a transportation terminal to maintain accessibility as much as possible for our customers and also for the visitors. So we want to keep the building as low as possible. We've determined that anything higher than 13 feet above will require additional ramps, will require switchback ramps potentially, which will impede the flow of the thousands of passengers who go there every day. It will also make it much more difficult for those passengers to navigate through the terminal. We have researched the issue. We think we are complying. We know that the Commission may disagree, but the wetlands regulation only says that we have to incorporate into the design and construction of the project the sea level rise of 100 years. And one way, of course, that the Commission has always found to do that is to raise the elevation of the buildings that are on the site. We think we can do that, and we will be doing that by flood-proofing, and I think we're dry flood-proofing, not wet flood-proofing. We're dry flood-proofing the building up to at least 2 feet above the BFE, and possibly even higher, depending upon what the state building code at that time will require us to do in order to get a variance. So we're taking alternative measures that we believe comply with the wetlands protection regulations, but if it doesn't, the ultimate answer and the short answer is that we aren't subject to those regulations to the extent they impose more obligations upon us in the wetlands protection statute because of our governmental status. And I've given you the cases and the citation, but that's the short answer. But I don't want that to detract from the fact that we're doing our best to comply with it, and that we think that this dry flood proofing will satisfy the purposes of the bylaw and the regulations while maintaining accessibility for the terminal project. We also would like to know that to the extent we would have to raise the elevation of the building, the one issue we may agree upon with some of the people in the Woods Hole is that we do not want the building to be any higher and block the view from the intersection of Woods Hole Road and Water Street towards the water. So we're trying to keep the building as low as possible for that reason as well. There will also be a temporary terminal building there during the construction, because that temporary terminal building will be built before we have graded the site. That elevation at that location, although it's even farther back from the water, is only around 6 feet above sea level. We plan to have that terminal building with elevation of around 9 feet, Otherwise, we would have to have a series of ramps that would make it practically inaccessible for our passengers. So the same issues are presented there, but that temporary terminal building will be coming down after the permanent new terminal building is erected. So we're essentially incorporating the sea level rise of 100 years by taking down that building after the construction is completed.
Jen, anything you missed to say?
I'll check with Frank on and see if Frank.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So, at the conclusion of our initial hearing on November 18th, there was a bunch of questions and a request for additional information. And as I stated, we submitted all the supplemental information. I'd like to just go through this quickly. One of the requests was for, the first request was for a site aerial view or something so that you could get a better perspective of what the elevation of the building would look like in relation to the neighborhood. That's the first drawing in your package. And there's nothing dramatic here. It's the whole point is to have everything on a 1:20 slope. So if you look at this drawing, you hardly notice it. The change in elevation, because the building is going to be about 110 feet back from the shoreline at the slips, and so it's just a gradual slope to the slips, and and a gradual slope downward. The steepest slope would be between the building and Railroad Avenue, which is at elevation 5.6. But it's all intended to be as gradual as possible for the accessibility requirements. So when you look at this drawing, there's nothing outstanding. The next attachment was the dewatering narrative. We prepared this for our 401 water quality, and we included it in here. We discussed dewatering for the excavated material, and all this dewatering is going to be back into the pit which we're excavating, which would be behind the bulkhead and and a silt curtain on the seawater side. Now, in that area where we're excavating, there were some chemicals found, and that we have an MCP, which we filed with DEP, and that material will be taken out and dewatered in the same pit and handled wherever the LSP requires us to take it. So it's all being handled by the DEP plans for groundwater contamination. The dredge material would be dewatered in a similar manner. It would only be taken out of a scow and either on site, depending if it's grainy, on site and infiltrated through the soil, or into a container and filtered back into the Great Harbor. Nothing that, there's nothing dramatic about our dewatering that hasn't been done many times before. I can answer any additional questions. Another attachment was the eelgrass monitoring. So we've talked with the Division of Marine Fisheries, and what we plan to do when we dredge the new slip 1, the south slip, we would monitor, take additional survey just before, the season before we do the dredging. And then we'll take a survey after we do the dredging, and we'll continue to monitor it for up to 2 years, Steve, to see if there's any effects. And, if we need to go back, we'll come up with, some contingency plan to repair it or do something else at that time. I guess, let's see. Stormwater review by the Falmouth Engineering. There were a number of questions that the town reviewed our stormwater management plan, initially submitted, and they had a number of comments and questions. Appendix 4, attachment 4 in this package addresses all those questions. I don't know, Jen, if the town has reviewed that, DPW has reviewed this? Okay, so there's a number of questions and answers in that thing. And additional, the drawings were added with a little more detail that the town requested. There's attachment 5 is just a description of the construction methodology. What we think, the contractor, the methods and means the contractor will use to do this construction. Attachment 6 is a vehicle and vessel and vehicle traffic discussion, similar to what we had in our MEPA submittal. There were a number of questions from the Woods Hole Community Association. They submitted a letter to you at that time in November. We responded to those questions in attachment 7. One of the board members requested a planting enlargement. That's included in attachment 8. The floodproofing measures, we discussed that, and basically, we're going to use dry floodproofing, and we're going to meet whatever the requirements for the state building code on that. And then attachment 10 is revised stormwater management plan. That's that the town DPW should review. If there are additional questions, I can take them now, or I can wait or I can just go into review our responses to the comments from Applied Coastal and Research.
Why don't you do that, Bill?
Okay. So one of the comments was the effect of prop wash and on the eelgrass and the beach on the south side of slip one, which is a decent observation, and their request was for prop wash studies and stuff like that. In lieu of doing an analytical analysis, the Steamship Authority has decided to be a little more proactive, and what we're proposing is to put a kind of a bulkhead barrier to prevent the prop wash from affecting the beach. So at the bulkhead, we would have a submerged bulkhead going out. It's shown in sketch 2 of the responses. It would go out perpendicular from the new bulkhead that we're installing out towards the water about 65 feet. And it would be submerged but still above the water, so it would prevent the prop wash from dragging the silt, pushing silt into the beach area or in the resource area with the eelgrass. We think this is a positive response and proactive measure to preclude any additional problems. In addition, we're continuing to monitor the eelgrass beds as we discussed earlier in the supplemental information. Comment number 2 was regarding the dredge materials and its use for beach nourishment. This material wouldn't be there's a small amount of dredge material. There's only about 1,500 cubic yards, and it's not, it wouldn't be suitable for beach nourishment. And the excavation material is certainly not, it's fill, it's not a sandy material. So it's not possible to do that. Comment 3 was regarding turbidity monitoring. This is something that Steamship has done at other sites. We did it at Hyannis site when we were refurbishing the slips down there a couple of years ago. And so, again, we'll go along with that. We're going to include the turbidity monitoring during the dredging and the excavation operations of work. And we're proposing to, have a limit of 50 NTU, which is a measure of turbidity, above the background. If we reach that limit, we would shut down operations until things settle down again. One of the comments was regarding the dewatering basin size. They're going to be on our site. We haven't sized them exactly yet. We would probably pick up the macadam and in the area that we need, and let the water filter through into the groundwater, filter through the soil into the groundwater, or we would decant it and filter it back into Great Harbor. But the size hasn't been established, but it will be sized appropriately depending on how much material we can take off site at a time and how fast we're able to dewater it. It's something we would size once we get there. Comment number 5 was regarding flooding impacts to adjacent properties, and we believe we meet the FEMA requirements. The slopes are all 1 on 20, which I think our expert would say we meet all the requirements, and it would have no effect on the neighboring properties. And in addition, we are managing all the stormwater from Luscombe Avenue and Railroad Avenue as it is, and the backside of the Crane Street Bridge, the 2 catch basins on the other side of the Crane Street Bridge will be incorporated into our stormwater system because they have no other place to go, frankly. So I believe that was all the comments from Applied Coastal. I'm open to questions.
Okay. Courtney, why don't you start us off tonight?
Jen.
Oh, Jen, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, I just wanna, Bill, can you or someone from DZA just talk me through the regrading? Well, I've read the response and everything, I'm looking at the grading, just talk me through the grading, because the grading is just kind of a concern for me. So,
Nate will do.
Okay, so the water comes up, still water elevation rises, comes into the study, his name is Nate, right?
Nate Russell, GZA.
Elevation comes in, not so much a storm surge, well, it's a storm surge, not so much waves, but just a regular storm surge, comes into the site. So I've got 10 and everything, comes into the lot. Then it starts with a seep.
Correct.
Where is the water that's behind the building now go?
Sure. So the current site is it's on the peninsula between Great Harbor and Little Harbor. The lowest elevation on the site is actually not in Great Harbor. It's beneath the Crane Street Bridge. So it's about elevation plus or minus 5. So in reality, flood water, when it comes from, assuming the ocean is the source of the flooding, which it would be, actually enter the site from both Little Harbor and Great Harbor. And it actually enters the site initially during the beginning of a flooding event. We're not talking about storm-driven, we're talking about direction of waves right now, but for a non-storm or non-wave-driven flow, it would enter actually from Little Harbor first. It would flood, Once the elevation gets above about 6 to 7, water would start to enter from Great Harbor. The water would rise from both sides, flooding the entire site to a 100-year flood, FEMA elevation 8013, so to elevation 13. When the storm recedes, water would flow back off the site in all directions, basically. It would flow to Great Harbor and to Little Harbor. That's the natural drainage pattern currently. When you get below about elevation 6 on the site, all of the water will drain to Little Harbor. That's how the site works, just based on the lowest point. So the regrade would be consistent generally in the sense that the lowest point on site will still be under the Crane Street Bridge. We're grading down to the north and to the east to meet existing grades, very close to it to the south. So a flooding event, once again, water would enter from Little Harbor and from Great Harbor at similar elevations, although it would actually be longer. You'd have to be a larger flood for water to enter from Great Harbor after the regrade is done. And that's just a function of the new elevations on the site to accommodate the finished floor elevation of 13 and ADA requirements. Based on the FEMA guidance from a flood perspective, generally fill within land subject to coastal flowage is not considered to change the base flood elevation. So, and this is something that Acres report agrees with, that there is going to be no functional impact on the flood elevation. So the question that was raised appears to be based on basically wave-driven flooding. The guidance, the FEMA guidance, their technical bulletins refer to potential to run engineering studies. However, if you look at the guidance, they state that it is very difficult and often infeasible to create an accurate predictive model for small areas. So when you're trying to look at the micro effects of a small, relative to the ocean, a small area in an embayment, it's very difficult to get a model that's accurate and fully predictive. So they have guidelines for site grading and slopes that are assumed to be to not impact adjacent structures or buildings. And those guidelines are a 5-to-1 slope or less on the site will not result in significant off-site impacts. The tie-in grades, the perimeter of the site, is generally graded at about a 20-to-1 or 5% or less. As we get towards Railroad Avenue, the grades actually reduce in order to maintain ADA compliance for the bike path and for the sidewalks for cross slopes. We actually have to go below 2%. So the first 30-ish, 20 feet or so on Railroad Avenue and Luscombe, we're at around 2% or less. Then we go onto the site and we come up at 5%, once again to meet ADA requirements to be not considered a ramp. And then we transition to a relatively flat top deck around the terminal building for accessibility. Similarly, grading down to the Crane Street overpass or underpass, it's about 2.5% max slope in that direction. To the south, there will be essentially a small retaining wall constructed on the southern property boundary. But that, similar to the guidance for slopes, when the FEMA's guidance suggests that as long as the fill that's being proposed is similar in topography to surrounding grades, there's a low possibility of off-site impacts, and so we've kept the grading in that area lower than the adjacent structure at the time.
Anything else, Jim?
Yes. Can you talk about the proposed consultant underwater?
Yep.
Or is that not?
I can talk
Okay.
about a little bit, that might be maybe more appropriate.
Anyway, so the proposed sheeting because the prop wash is a concern, that beach is a component on the adjacent property.
Yes.
When I met with Mr. Cloutier, he said that bulkhead was a non-structural, that we built a non-structural bulkhead.
Right.
Is that gonna withstand?
Bill, you gotta go to the microphone, please.
Somebody go to the microphone.
Please.
Is that bulkhead gonna be able to withstand the propulsion? Or just the force of that propulsion from those ferries?
We anticipate only about 2 feet of the bulkhead above the ocean floor.
Yeah.
So,
thought
I mean, it's,
so.
what, the goal here was to keep something I wanted something non-structural so that I could use a non-corrosive material. I wanted to get away from a steel-type bulkhead that would be an eyesore. And the other goal was to stay, somewhat below the water line so that it isn't an eyesore, 65 feet of sheet piling out into the water. So,
Yeah, but is that gonna be able to stop?
Yeah, is there gonna be any deflection? I mean, what's gonna hold it from
Yeah, that's what
doing this?
Sorry, this is Rebecca Skolaski with Child's Engineering. It will be designed
Can you spell your last name, please?
SKALASKI. Sorry. It will be designed to enough that it's going to, if the mud line does drop, that it will, we're going to account for some structural capacity of it, because if there is some sloughing of the material, it will be designed to withstand that. And it is possible to design something it's going to be structural, but not, it's going to be buried mainly. It's going to be a cantilever wall that's going to be designed to withstand whatever force is up against
if
it.
you look at the bulkhead, the waffle shape gives it some structural strength anyhow, so we're not.
We can
looking
design
at
it to be a cantilever wall within that area.
That's, the whole goal was to keep it as non-structural as possible so I could use non-corrosive material.
It won't be designed to have a tie rod and dead man system. It'll be designed to stand on its own. So.
And would the steam facility be okay with some sort of monitoring component of that beach?
Yes, I think that would go with hand in hand with the eelgrass monitoring for, at least 2 years.
Have to come up with, and that beach is,
Yeah, the other aspect is-
Have to be addressed.
Yeah, the other aspect of this, Jen, is, the prop wash is gonna may move silt up against the bulkhead, and eventually the bulkhead is not affected. But when we get our Chapter 91 license, we would certainly get a 10-year maintenance dredging permit along with that, so we could keep that bulkhead clear, effective
Okay.
for the long term.
That's the only thing I needed.
Okay. Courtney?
First of all, what I was asking for in the last hearing was a comprehensive cross-section that would show exactly what the impact of this was. You submitted a drawing, computerized model, which I'm looking at, sort of as akin to my jumping in a Cessna 172 and flying toward the site and looking down at it. And when you're 1,000 feet in the air and you're looking down on a site like this, you don't see any topographical changes.
Well-
Now, what I do see is your cross-sections above here, but they go through the part of the site that's elevated. So I'm not entirely convinced that by looking at this that the concerns that I had, which were reinforced through applied coastal engineering, about the effect of this whole site work on the adjacent structures, as my concerns haven't been allayed. I understand about the gradual slopes and all of that, but I'm one of these people that works in very practical things, and when I was a little kid, if I got in a bathtub and I pushed water toward the far end of the bathtub and it ran into the back wall of the bathtub, you know what it would do? It would pile up and then go to the shortest point on either side, which was usually over the top of the bathtub, much to my parents' dismay. And so I'm concerned that, that's what we're running into here. And unfortunately, I'm not entirely sold on the explanation. And this drawing doesn't clarify it in my mind. I've heard, and I realize that there are some very strong concerns within the community about aesthetics and how this thing is going to impact the community. And I mean, frankly, I share those things. At the same time, I'm still trying to understand why you're going to all the expense and all of that to raise the grade around here as much as is to go through all these contortions, other than you're telling me that you want improved access to meet ADA requirements. And I can't understand how those requirements can be met with things like elevators and lifts and things like that deal with it. Why is this building why not just do it on stilts? You're still dealing with the same elevation issue. You're going to still...
I can't handle thousands of people in an elevator.
But not thousands of people need to go up and down.
In the summer times, we have 1,200 people waiting to get on the boat.
That are ADA?
Huh?
They're all ADA. That's
No,
what I'm trying to get at.
That's what you're saying.
I don't know what the situation is, but, it all has to be accessible. We have actually gone to the State Architectural Access Board and reviewed this plan with them, because we will still have to get variances on the gangways from the access board, because we don't meet it all the time with the tides. And we reviewed the whole site with them. They're pleased with what we're doing, and actually supporting our request for a variance to be at the BFE 13 because of that, because of the accessibility requirement. All I can tell
I understand the
there's not only, the community and being as low and we're trying to do the best we can here. With the state, there's limits to what the state building code will allow us to do. And the limit is 13, and they won't let us go any lower than that.
I was in the construction business for 30 years, so I understand the dilemma that you're facing. And
It is what it is. I mean,
I understand that, but I also have very great concerns about the impact that raising the grade in this area this much is going to have. And,
It's over hundreds of feet.
Let me finish. And I guess I won't necessarily be convinced in the end until we've gone through a hurricane and I'm proven wrong.
And my response is, we're meeting all the FEMA requirements for flood design. This drawing, the two section drawings are scale drawings. They're accurate, okay? The bottom view is an aerial view, but, and so I think the design will be fine. In managing, and in addition, we're managing all the flood water, all the storm water in the area, including the town's streets.
No, and I think you've done a very good job of a lot of the rest of this. I'm focusing on what I think is the core issue here. And I think you've done a very good job of trying to balance out not a lot of regulatory and practical concerns in order to design this site. And I don't doubt for a minute that this is necessary. I mean, I'm not one of these people that says we should go back to the 19th century and have round tables and, steam trains and all that stuff. So we have to move forward. But this is a real concern of mine. I've made my point. I think the rest of the people on the commission, I'm sure, have questions, so, we're there.
Thanks, Woody. More.
It's a difficult site. Anything in low-lying areas creates a challenge to everybody,
Right.
even little notices of intent besides this huge one we have tonight. So I do commend all the efforts that you've made, and there is a lot that we had to read through, and thank you for that. One of the questions, I think, we can all design things, and we can all model things, and there's a thing called nature, and it will embarrass us every time. So I guess the only thing that my question is, you're designing it the best you can, but what if it doesn't work? So I guess I'm going to swing my questions more to and I like that underwater sheathing, for the turbidity, for the eelgrass. That was kind of a new thing we've seen, and I like that, and I'm really curious to see how it works. So I think the monitoring will be really important for maybe other projects that we see like this. But if the silt builds up against it, I think there should be, that it gets taken away, or whatever happens, how you're going to maintain it if there is eelgrass damage. Are we going to place a bond where they're going to have to repair the eelgrass? So again, I'm not saying that this is going to fail, but if it does, I think we should have some kind of safeguard in place for failures if they do happen. And the eelgrass is one of my major concerns. The other thing is, stormwater is a tricky little thing. Frozen ground can change engineering. I mean, this week certainly showed us that. What usually would, have great retention in a, summer soil is different than a frozen ground and when you get the runoff. So, I know that you're not the ones at fault of a lot of the drainage problems down by Luscombe, and, that stuff's been going on for years. I just don't want to see it be exacerbated by this project. So if there is a deflection with you trying to become more ADA compliant with your building, that you're going to have to readdress this and try and find a solution if this doesn't work. That it's not just, well, it didn't work, but we got our notice of intent, we're moving on. So the deflection into other properties, and especially into the railroad bridge.
The stormwater hollow is not going to deflect into other properties. I think what Courtney's concerned with is more floodwaters.
Tidal.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, I've
The
lived
stormwater, we're managing, all the water on our site, and Luscombe.
All right, well, yeah, I'm just, all right, we'll, it'll.
Well,
proof will be in the
it's
pudding
coming
when it
into our
happens.
system, we're treating it the best we can, and we're discharging it to the Great Harbor.
And then
Yeah.
the other question I had is, was there any eelgrass issues in the Hyannis terminal?
Not Hyannis. In the past, my past experience with eelgrass would have been at Oak Bluffs. We had it on the north side of the thing, and
Okay.
we successfully completed that project in about 2009, between 2007 and.
And did you use the sheet piling there, or did you just?
No, we just
Because it wasn't
avoided,
as close?
we marked it out, and we made sure that, this construction equipment stayed out of that area, and that's,
And you've been maintaining it, and it's
Right.
been fine?
Right.
Okay, that's a good thing to hear.
To follow up on that, Lauren,
Yep.
one quick thing on things that, Bill, how far was the eelgrass from where you were dredging and where your boats going? Off and off here, how far?
no more than 50 feet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so it's close there, too.
It was close, it's right in,
Yeah, it's right.
You know how I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys have a picture of what Oak Bluffs.
Yeah, I know.
It comes in on an angle,
Yep,
it's all that area to the
Okay.
north is
Okay.
eelgrass.
okay, thank you.
Okay, and those are all my questions, thank you.
Mary?
I don't
That's
have a
gonna
lot
be.
that hasn't already been discussed. However, I have two things. First, I was wondering if you could provide some specific references about the floodproofing measures, since there was nothing submitted. References in the relevant code or
Well, it's the state building code. Okay, that's,
and
everything, that building has to meet, we go through the state building, the state public safety department, because we're a state agency on our building code requirements, so anything that we build has to meet the state building code, so we're using the FEMA guidelines on dry flood proofing, and we're just gonna meet the state building code.
okay, and you also mentioned meeting with CZMA. officials?
CCM.
And did they have any noteworthy input?
The meeting was, back in January, I believe. No, not January. No, last fall, September. We met with them in Hyannis, they were, Hyannis Terminal on this project, and that's where, they brought up the fact that they would like us to have at least 2 feet of floodproofing for, storm, sea level rise, in addition to what, in addition to the base flood elevation.
Okay, and that's something that, although you will try,
And that's based on a
You're-
50-year life of the building.
right, but that recommendation from them, is that one of the things that you feel you're not subject to if you're not able to meet it?
No, we're trying to meet it, we're trying our best to meet it, and that's why we included the 2 feet of, that's specifically included for CCM. I'm sure we'll get comments on them from our Chapter 91 application is in, so I'm sure to get another shot at reviewing this.
Okay. And then one other thing, I also wanted to make a couple comments about the aerial view you provided, and I guess mine have really more to do with the perspective of the community about aesthetics, which is not really our purview, but I would just make the point that not only is it an aerial view, but the perspective in which it's presented, the foreground is from the highest point of land around there, I believe. And your facility is in the background, and that presentation leads to, it leads to buildings that are much smaller, but are in the foreground of this presentation, looking about as big as your proposed building, which I think you said was planned to be about 6,000 square feet footprint?
I think it's about an 8,000 square foot
Okay.
building, 2 floors.
Well, there are Hui buildings, of course, in here, and
Well, I mean,
they appear, something that's 3,500 square feet, a Hui building appears about the same size as what you're proposing to build. So I'm just making the point that this provides a very reassuring and favorable looking view of the situation, and I am not saying that it's inaccurate and you're misrepresenting it. I'm just saying this is the best it could look. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Jamie?
I don't want to belabor the point, but go back to the elevation of the building itself. You're effectively trying to raise the grade to make the building ADA compliant.
no, we're raising the grade
Well-
to meet the flood elevation.
But then you're going to artificially raise the grade to meet ADA requirements as opposed to ramping or something to that effect.
We're grading to elevation 10. The ground elevation is graded to elevation 10. The building, the first floor is going to be 3 feet above that,
Will you meet the 35-foot limit?
I believe we are trying to do that, yes. 35-foot height elevation.
From the first floor elevation, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, I believe we are.
Say that again? On the first floor?
From the first floor elevation to the top of the peak of the roof, we're trying to meet the local zoning requirement for 35 feet.
That's not the way it works.
That's not how it works.
It works from
From the
mean average
ground.
grade.
One at a time, please. Please, one at a time.
Well, she's saying the same thing I'm saying.
Okay.
It's based on the mean average grade.
Yeah.
So if you're at 10 already, well, you'll be at, do you remember what that is?
And I think there's a new local requirement for being in the flood zone that would allow us to go higher than 35 feet.
No, it didn't pass.
Zoning, and it's still-
Sorry, Bill, that did not pass.
Oh,
Town meeting.
I saw the notice, that's all.
Yeah.
Oh.
So is it,
I-
I have a question to Jamie or Maury or Court, whichever one can, or Bill or anyone that could answer it. Is it from mean grade to 35, because I don't know zoning?
Yes.
Or is it from first floor elevation
Mean
to the
grade.
height? It's mean
Mean
grade.
average grade.
Right, it's an
grade
it's an
across the
average
front.
street, everything.
Barbara Ricci was the
And-
precedent for that.
Okay,
And the whole idea of that is not to artificially raise
the grade.
the grade. I don't know what the mean average grade there would be.
Okay.
And the word is existing.
Sorry?
Right?
Existing.
grade.
Existing mean average grade, which is determined from the street side of, which there, I'm not sure how, on that property, how it would.
It's where the street side's like 5, right? 6, 5, was 6? Yeah, 5 or 6 over there. Okay.
And that's at the front of the building, whatever, however that's defined. So it's, the street elevation goes up.
Which would be,
higher
yeah,
or
subject to
lower.
interpretation on a property like that. Well, I mean, that would be my concern of how you'd achieve that. I mean, you guys.
I think we're trying to achieve it. I don't know that, I know, first of all, the building hasn't been designed, okay? I mean, we have a conceptual design, we know we're gonna have a gabled roof, but that's about it. And it's 2 stories. You know, we're more concerned with our general office, you know, the construction that we have to do in the next year or 2, than something that's 5 years down the road.
No, that's gonna be a
But-
concern of how big your building can be.
Right. And I know we do meet it for the general offices at Palmer Avenue. We got a 2.5-story building to meet the 35-foot grade
But you didn't change
elevations.
the grade there.
No, we didn't
Really,
change
it's
the
not
grade,
significant.
right. But, yeah, we're doing our best to do it. I don't know that we'll be able to achieve it. Again, you know, we're not subject to zoning bylaws as well as wetland bylaws, town, because of our state requirements.
So that might not even affect them. Yeah, I guess I'm good.
You all set?
Thank you.
I just have a question for Mr. Sayers. What you handed us this evening, and you said did you speak to Frank on this?
I
Because, I mean,
only,
it's kind of, you know, I can't really absorb this.
correct. No, I just called Mr. Duffy this afternoon and let him know that this issue had come up and that I was giving an opinion letter to you tonight.
Okay.
And he said he would look into it, and it's not fair to Mr. Duffy to say anything that he said in
Right.
a 1-minute phone call or a
Right.
2-minute phone call.
No, I
It was a very
understand that.
cordial-
That was my point. It's
Right.
like, you know, we really need to, I'd prefer an opinion from Frank on this.
Yes.
A written opinion,
Yes.
So-
We haven't had any opportunity to even read this.
yeah.
Oh, we agree with that as well.
Yeah, so, before I open this up to the public, I think you're looking at a continuance until we get this letter from Frank.
On deck.
So, thanks, Mr. Sayers.
What would be the point of a continuance if all the other information is satisfied? I mean, we gotta.
No, I want his opinion on this, on Mr. Sayers' letter. That's
Right,
what
I understand,
want.
but I mean, can Jennifer submit it to the town lawyer, and if as long as he submits his opinion in favor, why would we need a continuance? There's nothing more to discuss, really.
Well, it would have been, I mean, this was this was written February 17th, and we received it tonight.
I understand.
And I just think it would be prudent, if you felt that strongly that you were exempt, that you would have maybe got it to us a little sooner. Or
It
to
didn't
town
come up, the
council.
issue didn't come up to us until last week when we met on the bylaw. really.
Okay.
I
We
raised
thought-
the issue
we
of the
thought-
bylaw because your bylaw requires the first floor elevation to be at 14. Their first floor elevation is at 13. That was going to be problematic for this board. At that time, Mr. Cloutier informed me they were exempt from local zoning, so if they're exempt from local zoning, my question was, well, what's the status of the local wetlands bylaw? And that's when they looked into it.
Okay.
So, and we always
It's really
thought-
up to the board,
and-
whether, how comfortable you guys feel, so.
Hollow, we thought we met the local bylaw because of the floodproofing, but that's
That's
up
not
to
the way
you
it's
folks.
written, though.
Mary, go ahead.
Just one of the, well, we do require our applicants to submit their materials a week before the hearing. That's one thing, but as a more immediate consideration, if we were to close the hearing, that would put Mr. Duffy under time pressure. He might not be able to meet because we have a clock that starts running when we close the hearing as to issuing an order of conditions. So it might be unrealistic or unfair to Mr. Duffy to do that.
It wouldn't have to be a long, I mean, next, well, we won't.
Yeah,
We don't have to
again.
meet next week.
That one's gonna be continued. You had one. You could do the second, you have 4. Right now you have 5 continued hearings. You have 1 new notice on the second, 5 continued, but one of them I'm anticipating getting continued again. So,
And this would just be waiting for town council's
Do you mean-
opinion.
Do you mean it won't be taken up, or do you mean it'll go on so much that it'll be continued?
no, it won't be taken up. Because they won't have the information they need in on time. They won't have what you're looking for in on time.
Mhm.
So, you could do it the second, and puts it 2 weeks out. Gives Frank 2 weeks to respond. I can send it to him tomorrow and ask him to expedite it. If Mr. Sayers has already spoken to him, Frank knows this is coming.
Okay.
And council likes us. So, it's up to you guys.
The second,
I'm good with that.
okay.
All right, then at the request of the applicant, we'd continue this to March 2nd.
Second.
We've got a motion by Maury, second by Courtney. Okay, any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, I'll open this up to the public, so I just ask, for you that came in later, if you got a comment or a question, just please go to the podium and give your name for the recording secretary. So, comments, questions?
I'm Catherine Bumpus. I'm co-president of the Woods Hole Community Association, and I'm sorry to give you this much information this evening, but I just got some of the responses yesterday from Jen, your GZA information. I won't go through all of this because you're continuing, but we do have some general comments and some more specific comments. A couple of them you've touched on tonight. The plan view of the village, there are at least a couple of buildings on that plan view that don't exist. There are a couple of buildings that are shown to be significantly larger than they actually are. The building on Dyer's Dock is not that big. It's not a 3-story building. So for comparison's sake, it does put the terminal in a wonderful light. As far as we know that there are a couple of things that haven't been done that would be normally expected for any project that came before you. I've never seen this project staked. I've never seen it laid out on the ground. So for interpreting what's actually going to happen, you can't do that very easily. You continued a hearing tonight because it had never been staked. So that's something that the community might appreciate. We have the stormwater review that was done by town staff was a very thorough review on engineering standards, but it didn't actually look at the environmental standards, your environmental standards for the stormwater. There are some concerns that might need to be evaluated there, and Applied Coastal did not do any review on the stormwater. I'm curious about the calculation change for the impervious surface and whether or not they're including the dock, removal of the fill dock in that, because yes, there will be less impervious surface, but it will now be ocean. I don't know how that calculation came about, so that's something to consider in all of this. There are a number of other specific things. I would expect that at this point in an NOI, you would have much more specific dewatering plans. You would have things that, actual construction methodologies that would be followed, that would be spelled out. For one area, they are. For the phase 4 dredging, dewatering, they are not. It's occurring in a different location, and it is not. They refer back to it, but it will not be the same in both cases. There's just no way it can be. How the debris curtain, sill curtain debris boom will be deployed, how it will be kept in place with the currents that we know exist there, with the tide range, with the coming and going of the ferries. That should be spelled out so that it can be implemented to everybody's comfort and reassurance that it will actually work. With the new slip that is being installed to the north, that will be a regularly used slip. Currently, their Chapter 91 license says that that slip is only to be used in case of emergency and for repair. It is actually being used on a daily basis, but their Chapter 91 license says that that's what it is to be used for. They expect that it will be used now on a daily basis, so we will see more prop wash and scouring to the north. There is an eelgrass bed to the north that should have the same kind of protection that the eelgrass bed to the south does, or at least similar monitoring. The sheet pile wall is an interesting concept right there to the south. That was a brand new piece of information that we saw yesterday. I'm not sure that the neighbor to the south is 100% comfortable with that. It is certainly an area where people have gone along the shore. There are skiffs that come in there. It's far enough away from the pilings now that it could, I would think, pose a hazard to navigation if you were in there in a small boat fishing. I know that the steamship doesn't like the small boats that go in there and fish, but they do because the fishing by the pilings is good. So it still happens. There are 3 other pages of information, but if you're continuing the hearing, I don't want to take more of your time this evening. So thank you.
Anyone else? All right. So we have a motion in a second. You got that? Okay. If there's no other comments from the public, we'll call for a vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, so we'll continue to March 2nd on that one. Thank you all. All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
How do we see the project? How can we comment? We haven't seen it.
Downstairs in the office, all of this is down there, along with the big, huge, during business hours.
But stuff is coming in.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Yeah, but copy that letter, for example.
Which one?
I assume it was about the instrumentality, was that?
I mean, some of the things like for dewatering, we don't necessarily.
Okay, we're back in the session.
To everybody who's here. The person who isn't here isn't on the forum.
Okay, so first up is
Thank you for that
Arthur and Pamela
clarification.
Chavez, 400 Edgewater Drive East and 402 Seacoast Shores Boulevard, East Falmouth, Mass. I've already read this into the record. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Jen, anything before Michael starts?
No, Mike can start.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. This is a continued hearing. We made our presentation a few weeks ago, and we were asked to make some changes, which we have made, and we submitted revised plans. And I'll just briefly touch on the changes. The most, I guess, most significant concern and request by the commission was to try to find a way to put the new sheet piling wall behind the existing concrete block wall instead of in the exact same place. So we modified the plans to do that. What will happen is the sheet piling will be driven directly behind the block wall that exists in manageable sections. And then as each sheet piling section is installed, the blocks will be pulled out by hand, and you'll just continue to work your way down the line. That way, the block wall will be, in effect, like a in-place limit of work, and there'll be no, nothing will touch the wetland resources that are directly adjacent to the existing wall.
Excellent, thank you, Mike.
We labeled resource area land containing shellfish. We heard pretty loud and clear that beach nourishment wasn't appropriate, so we removed it from the plans. We added the license number for the dock. And there was some things not checked off on Form 3, so we made those edits and submitted 2 new copies of the notice of intent to your staff. There was one other one. I think Maury asked if I would ask my client to consider buffer plantings, and as you might expect, they don't want to put in any buffer plantings at this time, at least. And I submitted a letter that summarizes all that. And with that, I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, Jen.
Thank you for the wall adjustment and for the nourishment removal. That's what the staff's greatest concerns were. Too bad about the buffer, though.
Jamie.
You're gonna drive the sheet pile behind landward side. Do you anticipate encountering any residual footings?
Oh, well, we're gonna, we don't think so. What we're gonna do is we're gonna drive the first section. If there is any footing, we'll know from when we drive the first section, we'll pull back a little bit more. But we probed around and we don't believe there's a footing under
Thank you.
You probed behind the wall too, Mike? I
Just
know you
right next
probed
to
in
it.
front of it.
it. Yeah, on both sides.
On both
just
sides, okay.
With a steel rod.
Yeah, okay.
Like immediately?
Yeah, like right up snug next to it. Unless it's deeper than but I don't think there's anything there.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right, Mary.
No questions.
Betsy.
So, that block wall is about that wide,
8 inches or so, yeah.
okay? When you pull it out, are you gonna have like sand to fill in behind? Because otherwise whatever's there is gonna slump, there's gonna be a ditch. When you pull the rock wall out, there's gonna be 8 inches down X amount.
And tidal action will just,
Well, it's not tidal action.
Well, it's
I
like a
mean,
dune
There's a
area.
dune first, so maybe they could add some sand.
We
Well,
could do that. I think what's more likely is it'll sort of just settle back against the.
Well, it'll-
that's what I'm thinking, it'll just
Do you know
settle
how far,
back.
how deep it is, Mike, or you don't, you
It'll
couldn't
just
tell?
settle back.
I
It's
think
only 8
about
inches.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
but
I
it's-
don't
block
want them
wall,
adding
Could be that
material.
deep.
the block wall is only about 3 or 4 courses tall. So it'll be like, 3 or 4 feet tall, maybe.
Yeah. So, okay.
We could add sand if you want to make, if, to prevent, I don't think anything significant will happen other than the,
Well, if something does significant happen with the first part that you do, then,
Well, I understand you, in the dune area, Betsy, but not in the area of salt marsh or anything like that. I think it'll eventually just,
Fill in on its own.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It'll just fill in on its own. You guys can,
I think it would
when you
better to give it a
deliberate,
little
when you
structure.
deliberate, you can say add a little bit of sand. It's fine. I don't think it's necessary, but,
Okay,
Yeah, just this, we'll leave it open, so if they had to, they could.
yeah,
Anything else?
when
Beth?
staff goes out and looks at it.
Mike,
I'm good.
well, thanks, Mike.
Maureen?
Thank you, Mike, for trying on the buffer. Just remind your client that there is no fertilizing.
yes,
And if they ever complain about water quality, just remind them of that.
that, understood.
Courtney?
Good project, the only thing, I'm not sure whether this is a typo on the part of the explanation, or this is something you wrote in here, but it's a very common mispronunciation.
Oh, what are
We
you
are
talking-
not looming there. That would be weaving.
Loam.
Loom. is
Oh,
L-O-A-M.
that's an hour.
And I don't know whether that was
It's not
a
here.
mistake on staff's part or your submission. If it's your submission, change it to loam.
I know how to spell it,
Apparently staff doesn't,
L-O-A-M.
How's your English?
I know.
and we missed
It's
it.
a regional colloquialism for loam.
Thank you for putting that out, Courtney.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
At the request of the, no, can we close it here and take it under advisement?
Second. So we got a motion to close the hearing and a second by Mike, take it under advisement. Any other comments, questions from the commission? Comments, questions from the public? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Abstentions, unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike, good job.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, next up is John and Jillian Hayes, 39 Point Road, North Falmouth, Mass. And this one's been read into the record. And, hey, Mike, again.
This was never open, Mr. Chairman, so you're all on the form. There's no,
Oh, this,
wasn't open last week.
it wasn't on.
No. So
we're
you might
all
want to
informed,
read it
okay.
into the record.
That's right. We did read it then, though.
Okay, then don't read it in.
You did, because
Yeah,
then we continued it.
then we continued it, so. All right, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant, Jill Hayes. I'm joined tonight by Amy Wolfson from Blue Flax Design. They did a comprehensive landscape management and buffer restoration plan that has also been submitted as part of the application. The project includes construction of a proposed pool adjacent to the existing deck, installation of a permanent fence along the buffer to delineate it and prevent any alteration of the existing buffer, and then the maintenance of and restoration of the existing vegetated buffer and some other landscape activities that Amy can go through. This property is located on the waters of Buzzards Bay, which are to the north and west. There is a rocky intertidal shore at the base of a concrete retaining wall, which is in effect a coastal bank. And then there's a buffer. And then the existing house and other development on the property is shown in the upland areas. So this is a redevelopment project because we are making changes to the existing primary structure by adding a pool. And the redevelopment regulations are specific in that they do not allow any new additions to go closer to the resource areas than the present primary structure. So the pool was designed with that specific requirement in mind. The house is 38 feet from the top of the coastal bank at the closest point, and the pool, which is basically going to be connected to the house and deck, was designed to be 39 feet away. The area surrounding the pool is all lawn area. There's no natural vegetation nearby to the pool area. And the pool area does introduce some impervious surfaces defined in the regulations. So if we were only proposing the pool, we would have to mitigate, because we're in a no disturbance zone A to a coastal bank, we'd have to mitigate at 3-to-1. However, we made some changes to the existing impervious surfaces that are in other areas of the lot, namely a driveway area which was built right up to and adjacent to the top of the coastal bank. We're proposing to eliminate some very much unnecessary pavement in that area and to restore it with landscaping. And the amount that we're removing is equal to the increase in impervious surface by the pool. So we pretty much traded the new pool area for removing of paved areas that are right up against the top of the bank and the native buffer. So the net result is that there's no net increase in impervious surfaces, so there's no requirement for mitigation planting. There is some planting proposed, however, it's not a requirement under mitigation. We're also proposing a dry well to be installed just for drawdown of the pool in the event that maintenance is necessary, and that's shown on the plan, as well as a detail. There's a limit of work shown just running through the lawn area, just to basically delineate, not to go any further towards the wetland resources than necessary. It'll allow for access. There's an access shown on this side of the house. There could be, I guess, a secondary access this way, but there's a connection you'd have to drive under, and it may not be practical. We were a little concerned because the septic system's over in this area, and we know generally where it is, but we put a note on the plan to take steps to protect the septic. They may need to put steel plates down or something so heavy equipment can go across the lawn here. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amy, and then we're here to answer questions.
Good evening, my name is Amy Wolfson, and I am with Blue Flex Design. And I'm going to speak about the two main components of this planting plan. One, Mike spoke about as well. So the first component is the impervious surfaces component to the plan. So Mike explained that we're adding 476 square feet of impervious surface for the pool. So we're taking that amount away from the driveway, and we're replanting that with native shrubs. Inkberry holly and arrowwood viburnum will be planted in that area. It's a hatched area right along the top of Coastal Bank and vegetative buffer area. So this area will abut the restoration area, which is the second component of the plan, and that area is the invasive species management area that's shaded in green on your plans. So that includes 13,000 square feet of area that's coastal bank and an area that's vegetated in Zone A and Zone B. Currently, this area is almost entirely made up of invasive vegetation, including shrub honeysuckle, Asiatic bittersweet, border privet, vine honeysuckle, and sweet autumn clematis. So we are proposing to use herbicide to selectively treat the invasive vegetation and remove all of the invasive vegetation in the area. We're proposing to flush cut the rugosa rose in the area that is marked out on your plan surrounding that path down the coastal bank, and remove the bittersweet from that and allow it to regrow in just that selected area. And after all of the invasive vegetation is removed, native vegetation that is growing in the area will be pruned, and the whole area will be seeded with a mix of native grasses and forbs, and steep areas will be covered with 100% biodegradable erosion control blankets. Another portion of this plan is that the 3 eastern red cedar trees that were originally planted for a previous order of conditions are proposed to be moved to the western part of the property. So if you visited the site, you might have noticed that the cedar trees right now are sort of these like cedar trees in the middle, islands in the middle of the lawn, not really improving the wildlife habitat because they're just part of the lawn. So we're proposing to, let me move that again. We're proposing to move them to the western property line they'll also aid in screening on that side of the property. But they'll be also moved into another area within the A zone. So they're not moving into the B zone. They're still going to be providing wildlife habitat. And we're also proposing to plant 6 more eastern red cedar trees in that same area. In addition to those 6 eastern red cedar trees, we're proposing to plant 333 native shrubs, including bayberry, black chokeberry, inkberry holly, arrowwood viburnum, winterberry holly, summer sweet, Virginia rose, sweet fern, beach plum, and fragrant sumac. And we're also proposing 468 plugs of herbaceous vegetation, including switchgrass, Pennsylvania sedge, poverty rush, and wavy hairgrass. We're also proposing to remove the cedar posts that are currently along the edge of the lawn, and instead a pool fence would be placed in the area where there's a red line on your plan, so the cedar post wouldn't really be necessary anymore. So those are the 2 main components of the plan, and we are happy to answer any of your questions.
Jen?
Amy, when are you going to realize I hate seeing sweet fern on a plant?
We really think it's minimal. I know that you don't love it.
No, I don't love it. Keep it minimal. Do you really think that those, the plants that you chose, especially the black chokeberry and where is it, the clethra, are going to do well out there? I mean, that's Buzzards Bay.
We do think they will do well out there.
Okay.
Yes, but if
All
you
right.
prefer something different.
They're just gonna take a beating out there. They really are. That Point Road's that's a windy place, so as long as you're comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with the cedars being moved. If you're worried about them not providing any wildlife habitat, maybe kind of bring up the shrub vegetation kind of closer to them and kind of incorporate them into your restoration scheme. So that might be an idea. And the only other thing is I wasn't really too, this goes to you, Mike, and your creative impervious surface calcs, having that skinny little thing on the driveway like that, I don't know, I didn't know if it would be better if it'd be squared off or something. And the only thing, that is one big pool fence. And I don't know, Amy, if you've done a lot of like pool projects with us, but I like a tighter pool fence, around. I know in the past that I've required the fences to be tightened up and not just be along the whole perimeter of the lawn. But other than that, if you're comfortable, when you go in with your, for invasive removal, it's selective invasive, so you're
Yes.
not clear cutting this
No.
whole bank.
No.
Because I have pictures from 2005, and I bet Courtney and I bet Betsy, if I showed them the pictures from 2005,
From here.
yes,
Yeah.
the former property owner basically brush hogged that entire bank.
Well, I would
Right.
believe that because
Yeah.
when you see all of everything that's growing there now,
Yeah.
that you can tell that
It
it's
was-
been disturbed.
Oh, it was
Disturbing.
It was
So,
void back
I-
in
you know, I
2005,
believe
so.
that.
Oh, absolutely, so,
And our goal is to minimize disturbance
Yeah.
because we know
because
that
there
it
is some
can
native
end up
stuff in there that has managed to survive the past 10 years while being choked out by the invasive,
Right.
so it's selective invasive,
Yes.
it's not going through.
No,
Okay.
and the question is, would you be comfortable if we if we kept the cedar trees along the same, like contour line, but moved them closer to the western property?
I just don't think they're gonna transplant well. That's my concern, is that they're going to, there's really no reason to move them. Just bring the plant, I mean, you're looking at, you got a 20 scale plan, Amy?
Yes.
They're 6 feet away.
Yeah, you're only looking at like
I,
5 feet. Just bring,
You're right.
put some more little plants in there and take that pool fence and go on the back side of them instead of in front of them.
you're right, I understand, but this is, like, the invasive vegetation is quite a significant area that the property owner has agreed to go forward with, and I do think that she wants to do what fill in the space that we need to when we remove the invasive vegetation and not add additional plantings that, in the lawn, in the existing lawn. So the existing plan is to vegetate the areas that are currently vegetated, or revegetate those areas with native vegetation.
That's your argument, that's fine. I'm not quite so sure the board's gonna agree with you, but, and those are my only comments.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
But I do wanna see that pool fence tightened up.
Mike?
I'm gonna leave the plantings to somebody who really knows what they're doing.
Lori?
Mike, where are the pool mechanics gonna be?
No.
I don't know.
I'll bet you're gonna find
I
out.
bet you're gonna find out where they're gonna go.
Find out, and
Okay.
get back to you.
Yeah, because, I mean, there are things that you need
Yeah,
for
there's
that.
things, I don't wanna just, I guess I could say, well, we'll put them under the deck, but I don't know, so I'm
Okay.
gonna have to.
Well, if they're on the deck or under the deck, I don't care, but if they're not within that footprint of that deck or some structure, then
Then they-
you're gonna have to deal with it.
And I don't know is a better answer than
Yes.
Yes.
under the deck, if you don't know that it's gonna be under the
Right.
deck.
Now, is that driveway pea stone?
It's
I-
chip sealed. Chip sealed.
Okay. Because you have pea stone on the plan, and I.
Yeah, well, that's what's on the surface, but
Okay.
it's big under.
All right. And the one thing, a pool is a structure, am I correct? It needs a building permit?
Yes.
And a driveway is not a structure, and it doesn't need a building permit. So you're really not replacing structure. You're not removing structure, you're removing just impervious.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make that clear. And all of the fence is in the V zone, and I did measure the footage, it was quite a bit. So I'm with Jen on that it needs to be tightened up because the entire thing, and one of the reasons, Ms. Wilson, is that we can't make you raise it because of safety. I mean, I think it's only 6 inches we can have it above, not the foot that we like because of the safety for the pool. Which then, we've now reduced a lot of wildlife movement by putting that fence out where it is. So that's the reasoning for it, along with the fact that it's a lot of fence in a V zone. So it wasn't arbitrary that we just don't like fencing. And then the cedar trees. I will just have to concur with Jen. I don't see any reason to move them. And for the expense to move those versus the small expense to put, or even just allow the lawn to just not mow it there, it'll eventually be, the natives will take over. So, and that's it.
I also think that removing those cedar trees would be a view improvement. So, I know that that's obviously not.
Usually we give a 25-foot view corridor, and I think if I'm not mistaken, this is, let's see what the scale is. This is a 140 feet. So it's, compared to most people that really truly get a 25-foot view vista that have 7 acres on the water, and it's all treed, we give them 25 feet. So this is a 140-foot unobstructed view, and you'll put all the new trees, which would make sense, off out of the view corridor. But these were in another order, and I don't see any reason to move them.
And they're in the A zone.
And they're in the A zone, and they're doing well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Gordon?
I would just echo Maura's concerns about these trees. I don't think they should be moved. I think they're fine with that. Move them when you're just missing exposure, their viability becomes much less.
Betsy?
Mike, I know you're gonna come back to see us, and Amy, right? So, when you do put the new pool fence in, it should just be within the X zone? It should be out of the V zone completely? Should be right around the, you can connect it to the deck in the house, but
I'm gonna talk about that, but I understand what you're saying.
okay.
Mary?
I have nothing additional, but I feel the same way about this, about moving trees, generally speaking, so just so you know. That's all for me.
Jamie?
I'm not touching the trees.
Mike, what's the plan if you hit some, it looks like you got some pretty good boulders up there, potentially.
You mean where the pool is?
Yeah, well, in that area. What, if you were digging the pool and you hit something like that down there?
Well, when the septic was installed, which was nearby to there, the soils were pretty good. There wasn't any boulders. I mean, if we hit any rocks, I don't think they're gonna be bigger than an excavator can handle. They're gonna haul them away.
Okay.
There's about a 50 cubic yard excavation, because most of the pool is gonna be above grade. Like, it's like the lower third that'll actually be dug in the ground. I'd be surprised if we hit anything substantial, but I mean, if we hit something,
I just saw some.
yeah, there's a few icebergs out there.
Yeah,
I
it's
understand.
kinda, you know how that goes. Bigger, it gets bigger, the further it goes
All
on the
you see
ground.
is the tip? All
Yeah.
you see is the top 10%?
Yeah, so. Okay, that's it for me too. All right, so it sounds, anyone else?
Well, so this is gonna be a raised structure in the Falmouth region.
Well, yeah, so, but we'll
Greater
have
than
to make
100
a
square feet.
finding, we'll have to make a finding that it's in the X zone.
Yeah,
So-
yes.
Right.
I keep hoping you're gonna have some
Well,
discussion about that.
We
so-
are next month.
We had informal, we're thinking about it. And because So it's important that you point out that it goes from the velocity zone to the X zone, and then we'll discuss it in deliberation.
It's definitely in the X.
Yeah, because it's over 200 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing a continuance, so
Ninth.
9, all right, so what are we looking for? Relocation of the fence?
Pool fence.
Mr. Chairman, we're gonna need real conflict on the night.
Okay.
It'll have to be out for the next available.
All right, hang on, let me just find out when that is.
And I'm not here the 18th or the 20th.
Is Maureen not here?
You want to have all of our schedules when we're not going to be here?
That'd be very good.
We
Yeah,
used to
you
do
get a
that, but we
Snickers bar
learned
for that,
quickly.
Mike. You get a Snickers for that one.
Look at that smile. It's like
16th.
he's already had his
Mike,
Snickers.
16th work?
It doesn't for me.
It does not?
No, I have to be in Bourne.
Okay,
Oh,
how
I'm
about
sorry. Yes, I have.
23rd?
Please.
March 23rd it is.
At the request of the applicant, I make a motion to continue this to March 23rd.
Second.
So we have a motion by Betsy and a second by Mary to continue to March 23rd. Any other comments or questions from the commission? Hearing none, comments or questions from the
You wanted to
public?
make a
Oop,
comment.
Hey, Mike.
I just wanted to chat a minute. I'm not gonna try to convince you not to have the fence where it is, but you used the term tighten up the fence. Meaning get it closer to the pool,
Yes,
obviously, right?
and get it out of the V zone.
No, this fence is a, it's like a rail, vertical rail fence with, 6 inches. So like velocity zone, wave action and things are, the water will just pass right through it, in my mind. It's not like it's a stockade fence or a solid board fence, so the waves won't impact the flat surface. It'll be like having a sieve in the wave, and it'll just flow right through it. No, I can already tell I haven't convinced Betsy, but,
Mike, I can give you a couple of examples where somebody proposed a post and rail fence in a velocity zone. This board denied it, it went to court, this board was upheld. So that's split rail. This is a lot more substantial than a split rail because it has to meet a building code requirement for safety for that pool.
right.
I understand your client wants it against the thing and not right at their pool, but you've always heard me say this, those fences need to be close to those pools and not encompass the entire yard and call it a pool fence for safety.
No, I know,
So-
but we did have a pool fence, like meandering along the edge of a buffer in the
Quissit.
cliffs not too long ago. And, part of the reason for putting it there was to
Tighten that
sort
one
of
up, though.
make it invisible, because this is a lawn area, to have this fence just
Well, North Shore
right
Circle.
across. Yeah,
Is that what you're
North Shore
talking
Circle.
about? And
Yeah,
then
but they
further
also,
down.
they cut it in though.
Yeah.
They cut it in, it wasn't this large.
mean,
I can pull the Nashon Circle file.
I guess we're gonna have to think about how to do it, but picture like a fence just cutting right across the yard. It's,
Just
Be
plant it on the
creative.
side. Little natural buffer grow up to it.
Be creative.
well, I guess we'll have to, I understand you want us to do something tightening it up, so,
You have more than a month, and both of you have good imagination.
Be creative. March 23rd. You tried, Mike.
Okay, so any other comments, questions from the public? All right, hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote to continue to March 23rd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Abstentions, unanimous, so moved. Okay, next up is Lawrence Rome, 128 Little Neck Bars Road, West Falmouth, Mass. And this one has been read into the record also.
Yes, this was a
Yeah.
continuance.
Yep.
This one,
Hey, Tom.
this one. Right in the beginning. Where's your first date?
Oh, no. Just about to die. Somebody check the quorum on this one, please. Your admin did not give us quorum sheets. Oh, wait, that was me.
We get get what you pay for. It's all of us. Tom could have told you that.
Good evening, Tom. Good evening. Thank you. My name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. When I was here last, we discussed several things, and I was sent home to go out with Mark and determine the location of the wetland line. It's in the, up in the lawn here somewhere. We weren't warned beforehand by Betsy that it was supposed to snow, and it did. And it turned cold. I haven't been out there with Mark yet to do that. I have it scheduled for tomorrow, but then I can change to Friday, but I'll be out. We'll get that line. What I showed here is, I estimated a line, just sort of for the purpose of discussion, estimated a line sort of reasonably close to this 4-foot contour where the wetland might be, and this is to show what we're proposing. We're keeping some of the patio. We've reduced it by 25% in area, pushed it back a little bit. Pushed it back, there's about 3.5, 4 feet closer to the house, away from the coastal bank, which is, I have this line type along here, which is top of coastal bank in this location. And so this is to show with the reduction of the patio, and we still have 292 square feet of patio, tripling it, to show the amount of mitigation that you and the environment would be gaining if we could keep some of the patio in there. We have 876 square feet of mitigation. Basically, it's a, close to a 10-foot wide strip of mitigation along here. We also have 150 square feet of mitigation that would be from the utility shed and the generator back here. So we have a total of 1,200 square feet of mitigation in this location. And that location will change when we actually locate the, Mark and I actually get a line for the wetland. But this is just sort of an estimate to show you what we're proposing. I'd like to have a discussion on, have this discussion on if we can keep some of the patio there in exchange for, I think, is a good buffer to help protect the wetland. This area here is wetland that would be allowed to grow back in, so all of the mitigation would be only on the upland side of the wetland line. So I think mainly there was discussion on the patio and the wetland line. So I'd like to, I'll take your questions and get a discussion going if we can. Jen?
You're going out with Mark on the wetland line?
Friday.
Okay, thank you. Staff would feel more comfortable if we know exactly what that is. And my comments remain the same on the patio. Sorry, Tom. It is what it is.
It is.
Okay.
What's that, Jen?
Yep.
Betsy?
I have discussion, but I'm gonna save mine for deliberation.
Okay.
Mary?
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way about it. I don't have any questions.
I have no questions.
Jamie?
No other questions.
Mike?
No, I have the information, thank you, Tom.
Lori?
So are we gonna continue this because?
Yeah, we have to, because we don't know.
Because we're waiting for the.
Yeah, we don't know where the wetland
Okay.
line is.
And then the only other thing I did have on my notes, and I didn't see it in the revision, was the, you didn't have any of the caliper inches of any of the trees on the plan. Did you put them on the new
They're on,
plan?
Yeah, they're on your.
18,
Oh, I'm sorry.
10, 10.
Thank you, I'm looking at
Yeah, it's
two
not in
plans.
the
Okay, yep, thank you.
revision of it, it's on.
I'm looking at my old revision plan, not the new one. Thank you.
Court?
Other than that, everything's good.
Okay. So what do we got available, Jen?
9th,
At the request,
9th, Tom, is that gonna work for you?
Jen, if I can interject real quick, is there any reason we couldn't close the plan, with the condition that all the plantings are going to be, Kevin Clower, I'm sorry. All the plantings would be landward of wherever the wetland line is determined to be?
No, because I want to make sure we're okay with the wetland line. I never close a hearing if I don't exactly know where that wetland line is, especially in a lawn area, Kevin, it's only 2 weeks out.
Okay, well, I mean, the problem is the problem is not your concern, but it is our concern, because we are under some timelines here. But it's not lawn area, because it's gonna be planted, and it's wetland on the other side that's gonna be allowed to grow, so it's not necessarily a lawn area. But if we can't do it, we can't do it.
It's not
I
necessarily.
would not feel comfortable. I understand the time frames you're up against, Kevin, but I just can't feel comfortable closing it unless I know exactly where this line is. Okay?
Okay.
Because who knows, that line could extend all the way to that mound. And then where will you be at?
Sorry, Jim, what was that?
I said that wetland line could extend all the way to where Tom's coastal bank, thanks you for putting that on the plan, Tom, is, and then where would we be at? So, you know what I'm saying? As far as your argument for keeping your patio. So, I think it's just important everybody knows where that wetland line is. Okay, I'm sorry. But I mean, that's up to the board if they want to close it.
At the
Okay.
request of the applicant,
Let me make a comment. If Jen's not comfortable, then we usually don't like to do that. And if she's comfortable because something's missing, and she said, I can go ahead and sign that.
I had to ask the question.
Yeah.
No, of course you do,
I
Kevin, we
appreciate it.
understand that.
Missing, it's up in the air.
Yeah, it's not that
Absolutely.
we're-
Jen, I won't.
Believe me, we don't want to continue.
That's fine.
If I can ask one more thing, so it appears Tom might not be able to make the 9th. I can, so if you have any questions that are gonna be plan-specific, I'd rather you ask them to Tom now, so that I'm not.
we have the information, we just need to know.
Okay,
where
well,
the wetland line is.
you guys had a long discussion about where the generator was and everything. Are you guys comfortable where the generator is located? Because that is a plan-specific question that you had with Tom. The wetland line, Mark and I can talk with Tom about, put it on a plan, and Kevin can just say, yeah, that's where the wetland line is. So, if, I know the generator was a question and the utility shed were a question, if you guys are okay with the location of that, or don't have any other questions regarding the locations of those.
I don't have a question
Okay.
that came back in the same place, so I assume that's.
Where are you gonna
was
put?
brought up.
Yeah, I don't
Could
have
be
any
taken out of
questions.
the
Okay.
zone, but
This is what they offered.
Okay, Kevin, if you feel comfortable on the 9th, all by your lonesome.
I have my moments.
At the request of the applicant, I make a motion to continue this to March 9th.
Second.
So we have a
Pray for
motion by
warm
Betsy
weather
and a
on Friday.
second by Jamie. Close it to continue it till March 9th. Any other comments, questions from the commission? Hearing none, comments, questions from the public, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Abstentions unanimous, so moved.
Thank you very much.
See you back in the
Thank
night,
you.
Kevin. Okay, next up is a request to amend the existing order of conditions. Sally Peterson, 93 BB Acres Road, Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the existing order of conditions, DEP 25-3807, to approve after-the-fact work for areas labeled as P-Stone, rinse station, elevated AC deck, and to allow for the installation of a dry well for the rinse station and a platform for the rinse station and associated excavating, grading, and landscaping. Mike, Jen, you
Yeah,
want, sorry.
I have a quick thing. So Mike filed an amended. Mike, is Sally Peterson the prospective buyer?
No. Sally Peterson originally owned the property, So when we permitted it originally, she still owned it, and then the Gabriellis acquired it, and the Gabriellis own it now. And they're-
Okay, so
they're in
that's
the
just a
audience.
carryover.
In fact, we'd like that
Changed.
reflected.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll do that. So this isn't an amended to the original order because we went out for compliance and in the back of the house where there was depicted to be lawn, it is now pea stone for some reason. And we also noticed that they had a nice shower head coming out of the back of the house, but no enclosure, no drywall, no anything. So we questioned that, felt uncomfortable granting compliance, because if you remember, this is a riverfront project, and it did actually exceed the allowable disturbance in the riverfront. But the board did allow that. So staff felt a little uncomfortable granting compliance, given the deviations to the plan of reference. So there were two choices: to request a compliance hearing before the board, or ask you to amend the plan and accept the pea stone. And here is where we're at. Correct, Mike?
Yes, so if I could just
Yeah.
elaborate on that, because I think it's important to, well, let me start over. Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and the Gabriellis are here in the audience. They've owned it, they built the house. The Petersons got an approval of a house, and then the Gabriellis advanced the plan to build the house. And the house and the configuration are in effect the same. There's a couple tiny little jogs or differences, but in effect the same. Now, if you remember, this is a riverfront property, so the Rivers Act applied. And the Rivers Act limited the area of alteration that you could have on the lot. So it severely restricted what they could alter because of Fresh River, which is a small river leading from Sitter's Pond out to Vineyard Sound. So the board approved literally this area of 5,700 square feet of altered area, and absolutely to within inches this limit of work. So everything had to be confined to that area. So normally, there are not a lot of Rivers Act projects that you see, but you see them now and then. But we're usually looking at A zones and B zones, and you cannot alter an A zone if it's not altered. You can alter a B zone. In fact, you've seen many projects where an undeveloped lot is developed up to but not within the A zone, and the B zone is altered, which is fine and allowed in your regulations. So this wasn't redevelopment, it was just construction for the first time. And the Rivers Act really trumped what is usually stricter rules. So the original plan was a generic because the Petersons had no plan to build. They had wanted to demonstrate it that you could build and sell it and let the next person move forward and build the house. So there are two elements that weren't on the generic plan that unfortunately we didn't put on the plan. There was an AC unit that wasn't on the plan, but it's in that altered area. And there was a rinse station not on the plan, but it's again in that altered area. And it certainly would have been, if we had shown an AC unit on the plan, you would have approved it. We didn't know where it was. We didn't think about the AC unit. House was built, AC units on the ground. But it's not like it triggers mitigation planting because we're not within the A zone. So, and you've approved and you routinely approve rinse stations as long as they're in dry wells. So, we were hoping we could just keep those things. Now, my application talks about putting in a dry well and connecting the rinse station to it. I did not realize that there's already a dry well there for the roof runoff. So we're going to just connect to that dry well. That's slightly different than what my request said. But the main reason for my request was to talk about this area of Peastone that I think Jen's overly concerned about that we shouldn't be concerned about, because when the project was approved, it may have been, there may have been an intention to put grass out there, but if you've been to the site, this is extremely heavily vegetated. It's in effect like a jungle. You couldn't really walk through here without cutting or using a machete or something. So this little strip here, I mean, it would really have trouble being grass. So the owner decided, I want a maintenance-free kind of backyard. I'm only going to live on the deck outside because I don't have any room out here to really do anything. I don't want to have to mow. It's stable. It's just, you know, an inert material on the ground. It's not like causing runoff. So you folks allowed that area to be altered and cleared. Now, I think Jen is worried about that possibly someday that someone like me comes along and says, well, that's an impervious surface that doesn't support natural vegetation.
Oh, no, Mike, I am worried about you.
So I'd come along and say, well, it's impervious surface that can't support natural vegetation. We want to expand our deck to that area. Well, first of all, I couldn't do that because you have a policy that you can't be closer than 10 feet to the limit of work, so I couldn't do that. What would I do? Make it patio? But more importantly, even if I did make it deck, it wouldn't matter because the A zone is in a pristine condition. I know you know this by heart, but I made copies.
Oh, God, you're not giving us copies of our regs again, are you?
You know what, Mike?
All right. So I'll read it then.
Oh, joy.
There's one section in
Maybe
10.18.
we should have just let him give it to us.
I know.
10.18, 7E4 says, the total area of mitigation planting required shall not exceed that which would completely revegetate Zone A. Well, Zone A is here. We're nowhere near Zone A. So it's not only is Zone A completely vegetated, virtually all of Zone B is vegetated because of the Rivers Act. We couldn't go in there, even though in another case, in another place where Rivers Act wasn't applicable, you could clear the B zone. So even if I wanted to do try to take credit for the Peastone, I wouldn't have to mitigate because the A zone's already fully vegetated. So I was trying to convince Jen of that, and she didn't feel comfortable about it. So I thought the best course of action was, we thought the best course of action was to file for an amendment. So we're hopeful that you will grant the amendment and that you understand that we were allowed to alter 5,700 square feet, whether it's sod, Peastone, bluestone patio, it could have been and is allowed and meets your performance standards and your regulations. The important thing to remember is the altered area is still less than 5,700 square feet. And that's why I'm here.
Oh, no, the staff was just worried about, future precedent, not particularly this particular project, but just future precedent. So just keep that in mind when you're deliberating, that's all. I mean, Mike's right, he can't alter any more than what's currently there. But, in a future project, when, there's Peastone, I don't want to hear, well, you allowed it on 93
But you
BB
could have,
acres.
you should have, you could allow it. There's no reason why you couldn't. If you had a
Not in an A zone,
well, no,
not in a future project, not in this, I'm not talking about this property, Mike.
Okay.
I don't want to see in 6 months you come back, and it's you, arguing that we allowed this on 93 BB acres, because then we're going to have to just go back and look and say, no, that was riverfront, it's different. So,
And perhaps, and this had nothing to do with you, perhaps the board will keep it to the amount of disturbance that's allowed by law.
Yeah.
Rather than to have a 14% increase.
Well, that is up to the board.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
She means reducing.
5,000 square feet is what was allowed to be disturbed.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You asked for more, and you
Courtney, it's
convinced,
not a big, we can just
majority of the board,
Not a big fan.
And
but
the,
not the entire board. But the board
Yeah, oh, yeah,
voted for it.
absolutely.
right, and the limit of work that the board did vote is that exact
Right.
shape. Because we have to be 10 feet from everything.
Right.
All structures, yes.
Yeah, I think
I
what
think
the
we can-
deck shifted, and I gave you permission for that, it was, I think there was
The
a slight
information
shift in the deck
Courtney's got it.
that I administratively
He's got his
approved,
hands
it's
in
not,
it, so-
I mean, I think this can be resolved very easily by a finding in the order of
Yes.
conditions that says this issue with the P-stone is site-specific. So we're not setting a precedent.
Well, we can discuss all that
I'll make a
when we
motion to
discuss
close the
it.
hearing, take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by
Maury
Maury,
Betsy, second.
second by Betsy, to close the hearing. All set, Susan?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the commission? Comments or questions from the public? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote to close the hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Abstentions, unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Have a good night, Mike.
Next week, Mr. Chairman,
Hmm?
next week for this. Order of conditions next week.
Oh, we're not doing those two?
No.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Does that work?
Okay, we got a motion to adjourn in a
Staff,
second.
Frankie,
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Abstentions, unanimous, so moved.